All right, click the links. You join the channel. Check out the subscribe star. Forgive the 240 DPI, but I'm actually out camping, so I'm making this video and then I'm uploading it at the ranger station. It's got a free but very limited Wi-Fi. So rings of power. You know, I look at this image. I realize I bet you putting the cross on her chest really bothered them. Try to make it look as much like a star as they can. So Rings of Power provides an inexhaustible supply of examples of us versus them, globalist parasites versus normal people who don't eat babies, normal people who just want fun, simple stories well told, like throughout history. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, you'll see reviews and the disparity in the scoring for these type of, New World Order Bolshevik propaganda films. You know the ones I'm talking about. The scores between us and them. We rate this stuff honestly as what it is, very mediocre and sometimes just absolute bombs. And you go, wait a minute, but the in quotes professional reviewers gave it like an 80. Keep in mind, a professional reviewer is somebody with a blog or a YouTuber. It's like, if this video made you 17 cents. Well, so technically you got paid for your review, so now you're a professional reviewer. That's the only difference between what a professional is and what the audience is. And obviously the audience score is going to be the more accurate one because those are anonymous scores. They don't have to be politically correct. Where the other reviewers who are on newspapers and websites and stuff, it's like they're scared. And a lot of them are legitimately woke. When we see something like the Black Panther thing get, the scoring it gets, that's, I don't know, it's a combination of wokeness and also fear. If they with Black Panther in the Marvel universe, right in the middle, just a mediocre movie, and as movies as a whole, again, just a real mediocre movie. Probably a little bit less than mediocre because there was a lot of purse puppy stuff going on there. The only thing you could say about it was like the sets and the costuming was really good, the design elements and the CGI was good, but as a story, I mean, it's it's really impossible to make anything within the past 10 years without turning characters into purse puppies and Mary Sue's because of political correctness and this kind of soft Bolshevik revolution that we're going through right now. Is Black Panther as good as 1977's A New Hope, for that kind of action adventure type of film? I don't think most people, or as they compare it to, films throughout history that got the equivalent score, and you look at those relative numbers, for woke films versus the historical films, that most people would realize, through after the judging it through the lens of time, still held up. And you're like, oh, so you're saying that Black Panther was as good as those films, or Rings of Power? It's like, so it's only like the original Peter Jackson films are right in that same ballpark. That's a weird something. Something isn't adding up with these scores. And so Rings of Power is such a radical departure from Lord of the Rings. By that, I mean Lord of the Rings was a good, solid, simple story, and Rings of Power is subversive, Bolshevik, dog feathers. It's everything that Lord of the Rings isn't. The original story is not a masculine universe exactly, even if the characters are male. It's more masculine than feminine, and it's a story better suited to male characters. But if you replace the hobbits with the female version, it would probably still work, except that that wasn't the story that Tolkien told. And no, Amazon cannot successfully rewrite Tolkien because they're not master storytellers like he was. The best and only option they possibly had was to do what Peter Jackson did and stick as close. And I know this is a different, based on a different books, but you know what I'm saying? Stick as close to the theme and feeling of the books as possible. And that's not what they did here. And you know that, I know that. And if they say differently as they do, they're gaslighting you. Luckily, they have three-hour films to guide them because he stuck pretty close to the books. As he said, even back then when they made the books, made the movies, they said that they were going to try to do justice to the books, but they didn't do that with this. This, I don't know what you want to call it, a catastrophe on film, 500 to 700 million dollar catastrophe. Think how insane you have to be, what levels of hubris to think that you can improve on one of the best fantasy adventure stories of all time. That is arrogance that only Hollywood is capable of. They could rewrite Moby Dick next, and they can probably make it a furry pan otherkin whale spirit fighting the patriarchy. And you think that's an exaggeration, but you kind of know it's not that much of an exaggeration. Like if they had to remake, why give them ideas? If they had to remake Moby Dick now, you know what I mean? They would, God, they would destroy it. The whale would be Donald Trump. They would find a way to give it like a little blonde toupee or something and a red MAGA hat. And the scene where they're rending the whale fat, uh, it would be turned into a BLT gangbang. Because to be perfectly honest, I remember that scene. That scene was pretty gay already. Everything woke turns to garbage. Yes, but much, much more so if you're familiar with the source material. Like most people, is why people over a certain age reject this stuff, and people under a certain age who are not familiar with the source material are probably on board with it. And there's that cringy example of the globalist privilege Batman and Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man might have made $1 billion and Batman made $700 million. So those movies both did pretty well financially. They were still crap movies. They race swapped all the characters except the lead characters. That's not the story universe, and sheep accept it because they're not. I hope the only reason they accept it is because they're young and they're not familiar with the source material, and because generations nowadays are not reading comics because the mainstream comics now suck, so they're probably not going back and reading the original comics, which is, such a disservice that Marvel and DC have done, where they. Oh, and I heard that was it that latest Superman or something just got canceled, went 18 issues because it's a BLT Superman or son of Superman or something. 18 issues. Congratulations. You made a BLT. This is stunning and brave. Okay, great. So, you sold it to I don't know what the legitimate BLT audience is, male BLT in America. It's not a huge. It's like it's 5%. Dude, there's no way it's 1 in 20. I think it's more like I think it's more like 1%. But what's the Venn diagram between that, or maybe it is a couple of percent. But okay, so what percentage of those guys want to buy comics? Because let me tell you, and it's nothing against the BLT crowd, straight dudes, straight guys of teenage years who this comics are kind of marketed to, they absolutely do not want to read that. And most straight people, men, women, whatever, more men so because comics are for men, or at least they're the people who have paid for them, which is the only thing you need to focus on, not the people who read them the second time, the secondary consumer of the product. It doesn't matter. It's the person who pays for it. They don't want to read BLT relationships, and you can't. I mean, you could try to. They've been using 60 years of Bolshevik TV propaganda to get people to get on board with that as much as possible to lower birth rates among a certain segment of the population, which is why they do it. Anyway, where's I going with that? Oh yeah, congratulations to 18 issues of Gay Superman. I'm sure that's fabulous. There are always going to be sheep who willingly march themselves to the gulag, just mindlessly following the Judas goat. If you're paying for Bolshevik propaganda, you're going to get more of it. Most new movies are not worth even sailing the high seas. Hey, you can go see all these stuff for free. Yeah, I saw a few minutes of all this stuff. I saw enough of it to realize it's not worth watching, and that's pretty much everything that's come out lately. Anyway, everything they do is meant to corrupt and subvert because they're essentially parasites who are spreading disease throughout the West. And skip that little joke about Vlad. Anyway, so replacing the sacred masculine with the faux masculine, does the audience want to see a woman in this role? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. She's the romantic interest or the mother. And she honestly, I mean, she looks great, but she's too old to be the romantic interest. Should be the mother character. In our minds, we don't accept a woman running around with swords because we know it's not what women do, because women stay home to make babies while young men go off on adventures, because biologically speaking, men are more expendable than young, fertile women. It's 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 effing biology. It is what it is. You can't. I mean, you just can't subvert. You can subvert, and we're going to put human wombs in men. Oh, okay. Why not just open up the portals to hell? Uh, Putin, start with San Francisco when he starts dropping Fat Man, a little boy. Truth be told, I don't even know how many young men or hobbits or elves are too eager to go out, taking some ring and throwing it into volcanoes. That was a very scary story. Was it Frodo or Bilbo? He wasn't too eager to go out on that adventure, and his buddies came with him, which was part of the story. It's like that showed what amazing courage Samwise and Pippin and the other dude had to come along with him. Like, yep, we're going to go on this adventure to you, and we're probably not coming back. But it's like they did it because they were fighting this great, angels and demons level of evil. God, what a fantastic story that was. And every time I think of everything modern Star Wars, modern all this stuff, it's just, it does everyone I mean, these people are vermin parasites, but the best thing you can do is get younger people who think that this is the story, show them the originals, because Peter Jackson's will just blow the tits off of anything that's coming out, or even Disney, Lucas's Disney, 70s and 80s Star Wars. Thing is, women are very risk adverse. Well, they were, at least until this recent globalist subversion. Most of them wanted to raise kids. It takes like 60 years of globalist propaganda through the TV, which, as the theory there's actually theories about this. It started about 63, 64 with Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. That they said that once the TVs had hit saturation in the American populace, they started to introduce the subversion and corruption to start destroying the patriarchy. And you start looking at TV shows that people kind of liked, and it was always subversive, corrupting, and destructive. And, there was also another certain act in 1965 that forced women into the workforce, and the dollar was devalued because of the consequences of that hard seller. Women were brainwashed into thinking that they wanted to work because, feminism. Then Emmanuel Seller changed the economy so that they had to work. Congratulations, feminists who are wondering now why everything is so expensive. No, it's not just Biden or Trump. It takes 60 years to get here, or longer if you want to go back to the Federal Reserve, and then after 1913, and then 1914. Hey, World War One, we need to have increase these taxes to pay for it. Don't worry, it's just a temporary tax. Oh, so what's the American debt situation pre 1913, and what's the Oh dear Lord, that's a whole lot of zeros. I hope you enjoy the present Weimar. But beyond that reality, it reflects in the story. People do not want to see a woman do things like Galadriel is doing in Lord of the Ring or Rings of Power. Men are supposed to do these things. She would be better off teaching the next generation. No, reality is not istophobic. That's just a term the globalists use to control you. Rings of Power is propaganda. Everything they do is propaganda. Everything. And it's okay to say it's cancer. All those istophobic terms are not real. They're a cult that uses propaganda to slowly control the narrative, which they have effectively done. And all those istophobic terms are important because you don't have to refute it, deny it, or accuse the other side. You have to deny the term itself. You say, no, those are Bolshevik control terms. They're not valid. You're not saying that they're the istophobes or you're not. The entire structure of the language has been corrupted and subverted. And it took 60 years for them to introduce these shield concepts. It's like, I was going to say it's like Scientology on a large scale, but it's not. It's Bolshevism on a large scale. No offense, Scientologists. So why make her masculine? Because everything they do is to subvert and corrupt the natural order. They don't give a shit that you don't want this in Rings of Power. By now, it should be obvious that globalists are not about money. They're not going to show a strong, smart, blonde, who was the Orlando Bloom in the original, played the role of the elf going on some adventure, unless it was portray him as like you're never, I forget his name in the show, but you're never going to see a character like that. Probably ever again, or you're never going to see a movie like Lord of the Rings ever again, or at least until you replace Hollywood with, an alternative Hollywood. The only reason they used a blonde woman to play Galadriel is because they were going to make her so unlikable that the audience ended up hating her, which I think the few people who are watching the show probably do hate her, or at least they don't like her. Yeah, they have an agenda. It's against people like you and I. They absolutely do not want to enforce normal gender roles. And yes, there are normal gender roles. There have been for millions, tens of millions of years since we came down from the trees and wherever that was. Everything they do has some level of subliminal programming behind it. Putting her in the role of the expendable male adventurer sends a message to girls who look like her that having a family isn't important. They should travel and do high-risk activities. The actor is 33. She looks great, but she looks her age. So in most people's minds, women globally have kids from puberty, for the next 10 years. Like that fertility window is what it is. It's very narrow. It's not politically incorrect to say that. Like the truth, we can stick by the truth. It's biologically speaking, 33 is old in terms of fertility. Yes, in the story, she's an elf and 1,000 years old, but I mean, she acts like a child. But in our subconscious, we're thinking she should be home with her kids who might be entering their own teenage years, assuming she started as a teenager herself. Like her kids, if she's 33, might be better suited to go on the adventure, or to be trained for the next adventure. That's one of the reasons Rings of Power doesn't work. People want to see men and women in certain roles. It's rare that a Joan of Arc story works. I mean, you know how rare that story is. You had to go back to find it. And like much of what Hollywood presents, it's the eternal battle between tribal nationalism, natal, and the globalist parasites who seek to cut you off from your roots and make you just easily swayed and controlled. It's okay to tell Hollywood what you want, and they're vermin. They're absolute vermin parasites. They don't have the moral high ground in any way, shape, or form. If you got to call out the propaganda for what it is, which is why it's great to just simply call it Bolshevik propaganda, because it's a great shortcut, because it puts them in a weird position of suddenly you've introduced the Bolshevik term, and then now you have to start talking about it. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, join me on Subscribe Star. See you guys all next episode.